Welcome back. You here with Goldberg. Today we'll be talking about a potential Trump second term and what that might entail. So, as you all know, I believe that DeSantis would have been a more competent administrator, but that ship has already sailed. It was a foregone conclusion. I didn't feel that Trump's chances were terribly good until two developments. One, the war in Gaza, which is fracturing the Democratic coalition, causing the Muslim cells, some of the progressives to look at Brother Cornel West's booty. On the other hand, if Joe Manchin runs, could siphon off some moderates. And Trump, he very well ends up with a plurality. Not guaranteed, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility. The other dynamic is the fact that the Democrats have overplayed their hand a little bit. Now, of course, they would say we have to follow the law. This guy's corrupt. He's a maniac. You have to lock him up. But still, to enough normies, it seems as though they're trying to prevent him from running. And that's not going to play well, in my opinion, because he's going to get back into that underdog. He's being persecuted persona. With that being said, what would happen if, in fact, he's installed in 2025? The Republicans control the House, but they've shown very little initiative about doing anything aside from decapitating their own leaders. So it is unlikely we'll see major accomplishments in 2024, although they might be able to pass an expanded child tax credit. 2025, Trump gets in, probably pardons the bulk of the hoedown throwdown participants, maybe doesn't do it to the full extent of those who attacked people, although he could still commute their sentences, like that one unemployed Hispanic guy who attacked Michael Fanone, the cop. By the way, I read Fanone's book, and he spent a lot of time with a trans black woman. So I wonder if there's some connection between that and the manosphere, the red pill, Andrew Tate, sissy black manosphere. I really don't know. Someone is going to have to investigate, maybe hire a PI or the like. He'll also move to reclassify political appointees in the government Schedule F so he can get rid of liberals. But I don't think they're going to do deficit reduction. He'll just replace them with loyalists. So don't expect some libertarian agenda. It's unlikely to occur. Trump rages against spending. When he gets in, he signs massive spending bills because it benefits him at that time. It's just the name of the game. He will very likely take aggressive action on immigration. Now, there again, probably no massive piece of legislation without huge handouts for amnesty, but there's a lot that can be done at the executive level, the way you interpret the 1965 Act. I lay this out in detail in the book Why Conservatism Failed. If you're interested, one thing, if he has the guts, is instigate some kind of conflict with Mexico, and then you can use that as a pretext to deny asylum to almost everyone who comes through the southern border by claiming they're associated with cartels or other type of groups. So that would be something that might occur. At the same time, I would not be surprised if Trump, maybe using some vassal like Ramaswamy as Commerce Secretary, attempts to force through maybe an additional annual 2 million visas for oppressed curry cells, especially if you have an increased tension with China, because then the argument will be we have to get India on our side. That's already been pushed. I know Mike Lee tried to pass his legislation late 2020. The House, at least not the House so much, the Senate is attempting to do the same. We'll have to wait and figure if they can hold the line. But even on an executive level, there are things that could be done if they want to give handouts to corporations. And I don't think that Trump is necessarily against that unless the conservatives really hold his feet to the fire. Now, the GOP, assuming they have the House and possibly the Senate, they're going to dedicate 2025 to tax reform once again because the middle income tax cuts that were enacted by Trump, not the corporate, but the ones that actually affect your salary, are going to be phased out next year. And thus, they'll probably be doing that. Honestly, they should just go all out, bankrupt the governments, maybe allow 1099s to deduct everything, let you deduct your car, your oil changes, your tires, even if you work for a company, eliminate all capital gains taxes, maybe eliminate early withdrawal from 401ks. We should just turn it into a casino at this point because that's generally what they support anyway. You'll have a lot of that deregulation, which is what the Supreme Court is focused on. You wish the Supreme Court would go and revisit birthright citizenship, but they are now lasering in on how to make it easier for corporations to pollute the country, as is tradition. But regardless, I don't expect any president, whether it's Trump or Biden or Kamala Harris, Kanye, they're not going to have time to do much on the domestic front because of the state of the world as it currently is and will very likely expand. We already had Ukraine. There's the stuff in Israel, potentially Lebanon and Iran have a bigger role. There's been the flare up in Yemen. You had between Armenia and Azerbaijan. There are possibilities surrounding cobalt production in the Congo, lithium deposits. Venezuela was trying to go after Guyana. I could see if Trump pulls us back from NATO, potentially Serbia, either directly or by proxy, will go after Kosovo, China, and Taiwan. Look out for all these different potential flashpoints. And that means that the next executive is going to have to go around trying to patch things up. You can't just go America first, we're withdrawing from the world, because our currency is propped up by our ability to threaten people with our military presence. If you stop doing that, we would very likely lose reserve currency status, regardless of how large our economy happens to be. You have to project power. That's why it's very difficult to get any reform to the military industrial complex. And if you end up with someone such as Rex Tillerson, which is a dud for about a year or so, it's going to extend that process out even further. So I would expect much of the next presidency being fixated on the international front, less so on alternatives. I would say America should go ahead and do an Anschluss and take Saskatchewan and Alberta. And you can then seize all the energy supplies and charge Trudeau $300 a barrel for oil, revenge for his father's policies back in the day. With this, obviously, Saskatchewan and Alberta have received some measure of enrichment, so it's not trying to be naive. Calgary had a Muslim cell mayor and now has a Puja, but at least it would be interesting to see Canada sliced somewhat in half, and then it would be obviously controversial, but that's something Trump could do. Like he wanted to take over Greenland, and he should just do it. What are the Danes going to do? I mean, the Danes, seriously, what are they going to do? They're not Vikings anymore. I accept this image is not of Trump, but it fits the general theme. If you're one of those guys that thinks Trump is going to MAGA the world, he's going to save the universe, you're so happy to see America MAGA again, then by all means, if he gives you an order, follow it wholeheartedly, step right up, salute. You got to be ready. You got to be practicing your karate skills, staying in shape, getting your Botox done, because he is going to expect you to respond to the call. And that's excellent. There was a tweet made by Roosh V, I think in November or December of 2020, and he said, Donald Trump is our divinely appointed leader, and hence his will reflects God's will. He need only give us an order and we shall follow. That is the mentality that you need to adopt, if you haven't already, to ensure that your future is bright and it's morning again in America. Now, if you happen to belong to more of the wistful, pragmatic side of the equation, I would encourage you, like I said with DeSantis, see that 4 years as buying you some time. You're not going to be forced to take an injection or have your taxes jacked up. You won't have a government looking at your financial transactions because you've been naughty and bought certain things. And I looked into that program because it just came out as a story, and it was headed by a certain Noah Bischoff. You can just guess what his ethnic origin happens to be. But yeah, finish up your trade school, your IT training, your medical. If you have a girl that's worth your while, look into buying some land in the country, hopefully having a remote job, or there's enough of an industry you can work out there and not be stuck close to the cities where it's all going to go down, or maybe relocate overseas. But try to avoid getting too enraptured by this false song of the Howling Madness suicide charge. I always think about, I made a video years ago talking about World War One and the travesty, because you have these right wingers that respond and they go, I'd rather die in the Somme than go to another HR meeting. And that's the mentality. It's childish, it's stupid. But if you had taken a million or two young German men in 1914 and shipped them to Namibia or South Africa or Cameroon, today you'd probably have very functional, effective, relatively safe states in those regions, regardless of what happened to the Kaiserreich. So it's not to diminish the romanticism or the sense of having purpose and a cause, but don't get too readily reeled in to wasting your life, especially at a young age, for some vague political idea. Because there's a lot more you can do. And frankly, there's a lot more you can probably do for your own people and your own civilization if you're a little bit more hesitant and you strategize and say, is this really worth my while or not? So that's my view on a second Trump term. Let me know if you think it's going to be Trump, Biden, or perhaps Kamala.